I've been doing lately on my stream is kind of getting a little bit more involved in knowing history. I have a, I have a clip that's pretty infamous for me thinking that the World War II was in the 1800s.
Okay, World War II was what, 1876?
Try again.
1865.
Wait,
That
World
was
War II?
That was the Civil War.
Yeah.
You said
1876? When was it?
Well, it began in 1939.
I was almost there.
Okay.
Right? 1941. That was Pearl Harbor. So she would be correct if she was talking about the United States.
Where was Pearl Harbor at?
Hawaii.
I always thought it was Japan.
So I've been trying to get a little bit more educated on what's been going on. I learned about, I think it was called like Operation Praying Mantis, the history of Iran versus America and Iran and Israel, which is a great watch. But one of the things that I've always been curious about was the travesties and the horror that was Japan before the nuke went off. So I have a video here. We're going to be watching a couple of these later. So subscribe and like the video if you like these type of videos. I'm going to be reacting here to something called the Nanjing Massacre, Unparalleled Horror. I'm not really sure what this is about, but my chat linked me it when I was told what actually went on with Japan before the nuke. I would like to know what this actually is.
Let's start with today's video. I want to share something incredible with you. This is the Ridge wallet, and the holiday season is around the corner, and if you're looking for the perfect...
This is the guy's sponsored segment, and I will say, I'm not sponsored, but I vouch for Ridge wallet. They're great. I've had like 3 before.
gift for someone, or just yourself.
They're really nice.
Get them a Ridge wallet. Why not? So what is Ridge?
That's
well,
the
as
exact
I said,
one I
it's
have.
a wallet, but it's not just a wallet. It's a game changer. Forget about bulky wallets from the past. We're like stuffed with receipts and all sorts of junk you don't need. The Ridge wallet can hold 12 cards. They all slide in here. It's very easy to pop them out. And they've also got a cash clip on the back so you can keep some money in there. Did I say it holds 12 cards? So plenty. I've got 3 in there.
Oh, it holds way more than 12. Like, I got motherfuckers who their wallet looks like a Yu-Gi-Oh deck, holding like 40 fucking cards. That shit's insane.
Myself, but that's just me. You could have 12 if you want. It's also got RFID blocking, so you're protected from digital pickpockets.
The Japanese did not want to surrender. They would have kept fighting. We did drop a couple of big bombs. Yeah, that's what I heard, but I want to get educated here.
Which is brilliant. They've also got their new Hyperline collection, which is super bright, great looking, feels great. And then there's also the ceramic collection, powder coated, which in a bunch of different scales. I got the lavender one here. It feels super smooth.
Wow, look at that, dude.
It's a lovely bit of kit. Ridge offers the best gifts with 30 plus colors and styles, including leather. There's something for everyone. Plus, you can personalize it with text or a design.
I like this guy because he's
AirTag
bald.
attachments available on every relevant
I
product.
believe what he
Never lose your
says more.
essentials again. 80,000 5-star
I know he
reviews,
ain't got
3
nothing to
million
hide.
customers, a 99-day risk-free trial, and a lifetime warranty. So what are you waiting for? Head to ridge.com/shadows.
I will use ridge.com for the shadows. 30%.
Ridge.com/shadows. You can enter your email or mobile number for a free chance to win a Ridge
30%
bundle
off,
worth
guys.
$4,000. No purchase necessary.
That's amazing.
And now back to today's video.
That's
The
amazing.
Nanjing Massacre, occurring over 6 brutal weeks in the late 1930s, is, without doubt, one of the single worst events to ever occur in the entirety of human history.
Really?
As the Japanese Imperial
Even worse
Army
than me making my
captured
YouTube channel?
Nanjing, then the capital of China, they went absolutely rabid, unleashing a torrent of cruelty that saw countless rapes and murders inflicted
Jesus.
upon the city's populace. Today, we're telling the story of...
Does Hassan believe in those rapes, or is there not enough forensic evidence? I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask Hassan if that actually occurred or not. I'm gonna go to his channel right now and just double check.
that horror. But before we begin, we should warn you. This video features a lot of survivor testimony, and as we don't wish to belittle their experience, we have not sanitized nor edited these testimonies
Good.
to make them more palatable
Okay.
or more monetizable. This is a very heavy video.
I'm ready. Let's get into it. Oh, damn, bro. What the hell? This channel's awesome. What the fuck, bro? This editing is insane.
The
This
road
is
to
a Wuthering
Nanjing
Waves done.
began with the Japanese invasion of China on the 7th of July 1937. Here, the Japanese military, fueled by an insatiable desire for more resources and expansion, poured into China, coming by land from across the border with Manchuria and by sea with ambitious assaults along the east coast. Eventually, Japan wanted to conquer all of China, but one of their immediate priorities was Nanjing.
Why did Japan ever think they had a chance to conquer China? Am I crazy? Am I missing something? I feel like Japan's military force wouldn't even hold a candle to China's military. Ego? They did. Wait, Japan conquered China? Japan was crazy back in the day. Oh shit, really? So they were actually OP as fuck? I always assumed that bigger country means bigger, stronger. Holy shit. All right, so maybe Japan was way bigger of a threat than I'm currently understanding.
The country's capital, and given its location only 100 or so miles away from the east coast, it wouldn't be long until the Japanese were at the gates. They finally arrived on the 9th of December, but immediately at least, the guns remained silent. The reason for this silence soon revealed itself as a Japanese envoy rode up to the city gates with a simple proclamation: surrender in 24 hours or else no mercy would be shown. The Chinese defenders, having heard the horror stories
shit.
coming out of Shanghai, didn't entertain the idea, and sure enough, on the very second that 24 hours passed from that proclamation, an assault on the city began. The ensuing battle was a slaughter. The Chinese forces under General Tang Xingqi were proved unable to stem the Japanese tide, and they quickly began to lose control of the city. Amidst this cascading chaos, a desperate exodus was underway, with civilians under the grim shadow of impending horrors fleeing the city in droves.
Okay, this sounds insane. Yeah, because I'm still getting guilty for shit my great-grandparents did. Great-great-great-grandparents. Well, actually, my great-parents were not slave owners. But I'm still hearing about that shit every single day when I was growing up. Do you know that Korea had the longest record of slavery? No, I didn't know that at all. I only learned maybe 6 months ago how bad Japan was before the nuke. Because I never knew why they did that shit. I never knew that. I always thought that United States nuked them for no fucking reason, because that's how it was taught to me. So I didn't know they were this massive fucking monster. I just randomly heard in history class, and yes, that's when we bombed Japan. I was like, well, why'd we do that? They're so kawaii. So that's why this is so interesting to me.
Estimates suggest that approximately 75% of Nanjing's population
They
had been
nuked them because
evacuated by
Japan
the
was
time
siding
the
with the
Japanese
Nazis?
breached
Oh,
its
that's not
gates.
good.
The affluent, with resources at their disposal, were the initial wave of this tidal evacuation, leading the charge in their motorcars. Behind them, the middle and poorer classes followed, leaving behind only those for whom departure was an unattainable luxury. Other groups, such as the tanker boat people, largely chose to remain regardless of means, destined to be engulfed by the nightmare that was soon to follow. Violent incidents
Tonka
occurred
boat people,
from
what
the
the
moment the
fuck?
first Japanese soldiers entered
It's
the
like a
city.
Dark
The
Souls
massacre
mob.
proper and the abject horrors it wrought is typically deemed to have started on the 13th of December, the day the Chinese garrison surrendered. So now, let's have a look at the horrors that were inflicted on the people of Nanjing. As the Japanese took control of Nanjing following the battle, streets that once teemed with the lively exchanges of daily life were suddenly awash with blood as their army rampaged. Anyone could be targeted. Men, women, young, old. If they weren't Japanese, they were a potential target, their fate being decided by nothing but the benevolence, or lack thereof, of the Japanese soldier in front of them. This brutality was not just confined to pockets or isolated incidents either. It was everywhere. Let's try and get a grasp of how...
Okay, maybe I should Google this. Okay, let me Google this. Why was Japan so angry before the nuke? Japanese imperial ambition and resource needs Japan, facing economic challenges due to the Great Depression and a lack of domestic resources like oil and rubber, pursued an aggressive policy of territorial expansion in Asia. Okay, so they were trying to fuck everybody else up because they weren't like rich in resources? It's because they had no resources. Arrogant, not angry? Okay, gotcha. More like arrogant, not really angry. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so they needed resources. Okay, gotcha. Jesus, really? Fuck.
How widespread the killing was. Let's turn to the words of John Rabe, the German expatriate who was living in Nanjing during the massacre, who wrote the following in his diary. We come across corpses every 100 to 200 yards. The bodies of civilians that I examined had bullet holes in their backs. These people had presumably been fleeing and were shot from behind. Such encounters were hardly rare for Raby, though, with him writing on a later date. While cleaning up the zone, we find many bodies in the ponds, civilians who have been shot, 30 in just one pond, most of them with their hands bound, some with stones tied to their necks.
Oh my God.
But while Rabe's testimony is useful in allowing us to understand the scale of the violence, we must not lose track of the individual suffering endured by so many in Nanjing. So now, let us focus on the accounts of Nanjing's Chinese residents, starting with Yi Kulan, who was just 14 during the massacre. To quote, "I remember that there was a pond in front of the small building where we lived. The Japanese killed people along the bank and pushed them into the pond. The pond was full of dead bodies, and the water was totally the red color of blood. I saw a Japanese devil forcing a young man about 20 years old to the side of the pond, stabbing him to death with a bayonet and then pushing him into the pond."
Jesus
Next, we have the
Christ.
extensive testimony of Xia Shuqin, who was just 8 years old during the massacre. "On the morning of December the 13th, 1937, a group of Japanese soldiers, about 30 people, came to knock on our door. They shot the owner of the house immediately when he opened the door. Seeing this, my father kneeled down in front of them, begging them not to kill any more people, but he was shot dead by them as well. My mother was scared and hid under the table with my 1-year-old sister. but she was dragged out by the Japanese soldiers. They grabbed my sister away from my mother, throwing her fiercely to the ground. Then they tore my mother's clothes, and several soldiers gang-raped her before killing her with a bayonet. They then cruelly struck a bottle into my mother's private part. Later, several
Holy
Japanese soldiers forced into the
shit.
neighborhood room where my grandfather, grandmother, and 2 elder sisters were hiding. They tried to rape my elder sisters, but were strongly resisted by my grandfather and grandmother, so they killed the 2 old people brutally. Then the Japanese soldiers tore away all the clothes of my 2 elder sisters. They gang-raped them before killing them with a bayonet. The soldiers stuck my grandmother's walking stick into my eldest sister's private part. I was hiding in the quilt on the bed. I cried aloud out of fear that I was stabbed in the back by the Japanese soldiers 3 times, so I fainted. I didn't know how long had passed, but I was awoken by the cry of my 4-year-old younger sister and found we were surrounded by the bodies of my family. We could do nothing but cry loudly, wishing to wake up my mother. The Japanese also spared no quarter for the infernal.
Oh my God. Wait, this is like super villain level shit. Jesus. Because, like, I understand that deaths happen in war because, you know, people are fighting and that's what we're all leading to. But the gang rapes is like, there's just no fucking reason to do that shit unless you're just fucking pure evil. Yeah, a lot of Chinese people still hate the Japanese until this day. Well, I doubt any of the Japanese people are alive that did that in fucking 2025. My wife is Chinese. I've been to China, and they remind the Chinese how evil the Japanese were to them commonly. One lake Japan had Chinese build a dam that had nothing to do with them, so they drowned them after it was built. Oh my God.
As demonstrated by the testimony of Zhu Shisheng, who was 22 during the ordeal. One afternoon, the Japanese soldiers came in to arrest people. I pretended to be ill and laid on the ground, covered with a quilt.
Japanese people fucked up, did some fucked up things. People don't really know that because they were lucky that Germans were somehow worse than them. Yeah, the concentration camps. I don't really think things get worse than that, huh, guys? I wonder if we'll talk about Unit 731. I keep on hearing about Unit 731. Maybe I'll look into that after.
They took me and 2 other men to the river, and when we got to the river, the other 2 were hacked to death by the Japanese soldiers. Then a Japanese soldier wanted to kill me. I begged them. I used gestures for fear they would not understand me. As I was speaking, 3 more Japanese soldiers came, and before I could see them clearly, one of them hacked me on the back of the neck. I fell to the ground. I still had some consciousness at that time, and because I was wearing a torn overcoat, I bit my collar, holding my breath to pretend to be dead. After a few minutes, the Japanese soldiers kicked me with their feet, but I didn't move. They then said something like, "dead," the quote ends. But of all the groups the Japanese subjected to horrendous violence, a special hatred seems to have been reserved for prisoners of war, as demonstrated by the testimony of Li Gaoshan, then a 13-year-old boy who had just recently signed up with the Chinese army. We were disarmed by the Japanese. Our arms were all tied behind our back, and they drove us away. We stood side by side in a room, amounting to hundreds of people. At about 8 or 9 o'clock, the Japanese soldiers suddenly shot at the crowd from the window, killing most of the captives on the spot. I was covered with blood on my body and face, but I was not hurt. A dozen people and I ran up the stairs to the 2nd floor. Some people broke their legs and couldn't run. Then they were killed by the Japanese troops on the spot. Only 6 of us escaped. Later we were discovered by a Japanese soldier. All the other 5 were killed on the spot, but they left me alive. They touched my head, made fun of me, and took me to the Japanese army to work as a coolie. Amidst this...
Okay, I need to look up what a coolie is. An unskilled native labor in India, China, and some Asian countries. So they made him a slave.
Myriad of malevolence. One incident exemplifies the scale and horror of the Japanese murder spree better than any other. The 100-man killing contest. This contest, which was gleefully reported on by the Osaka, Mancini, and Tokyo Nichi-Nichi newspapers, saw 2 Japanese officers, Toshiaki Mukai and Tsuyoshi Noda, vying to see who could be the first to kill 100 people with a sword. The 100 people consisting of prisoners of war and civilians who had been grabbed off the street for the competition. Setting about their task with the spirit of friendly rivalry one would normally reserve for a Sunday 5-a-side match, both men exceeded the 100-kill benchmark. So much so, in fact, that it was difficult to decide upon a winner, and so another competition was organized shortly after with a new...
There's a Christian Bale film on this? I'll probably watch it later.
This time, the score
Flowers of War
was documented, with the Nichi-Nichi proudly boasting that Mukai took the win with 106 kills to Noda's 105. Truly, one struggles to even put this brutality into words. Even in Nazi Germany, there were some efforts made to present a wholesome veneer to the wider public, a tell that deep down those involved were fully aware of the abhorrent evil they were committing, but here To see such things reported upon with such wanton glee, well, how can we put that into words? Now,
Yeah.
we saw in Xie Shuqin's testimony that the populace of Nanjing was also subjected to acts of horrendous sexual cruelty. But what we did not get to discuss was the tragic reality that such acts were just as prolific as acts of murder. To gain an appreciation of this, let's once again zoom in on the accounts of survivors, starting with Yu Kulan, who was
Yeah, the only thing I've ever heard of like a 100-man killing contest is like Legolas and Gimli from fucking Lord of the Rings, right? But like they're killing orcs, so it's like way different, you know what I'm saying?
just 14 years old during the massacre. To quote, on another occasion, Japanese devils broke in and searched everywhere for flower girls, their term for beautiful women. Through the gap between the stairs, I saw my sister-in-law was found by the Japanese devils. Just before she was taken away, the wife of an officer of the Chinese army came in from outside.
Yeah, or
the
PUBG.
Japanese saw her dressed up in fashionable clothes, and she looked beautiful, so they abandoned my sister-in-law, whose face was covered with ugly ash. They rushed to the officer's wife and forcibly grabbed her away. This obsession with beautiful women was omnipresent, and it comes up time and time again in the accounts of survivors, with another example being that of Sen Hongyi. I was 13 years old at that time. The Japanese soldiers shouted, "Child, child, good boy," and they pushed me into the fire. My trouser legs were set on fire, and my legs got burned, the scars of which can still be seen today. The Japanese army shot at my father, who was holding my second younger sister. The bullet passed between the two and grazed my second younger sister's jaw, which immediately began to bleed. Then the Japanese army took my father and several other men away, asking them to find flower girls. Word of the Japanese obsession soon spread, and Chinese women responded by doing the only thing they could to make themselves unappealing in order to avert the Japanese gaze, as demonstrated by the testimony of Chen Fengying.
So this is really bad. So they were like, before the nukes, they were like a bunch of enraged soldiers who were going on rape and murder sprees on everybody else because they just needed more resources for their country. This is so disgusting. Yeah, man, this is fucking terrible, bro. Basically, there were no rules, and as long as you were Japanese, everything goes. Holy shit. But now they're kawaii, right? Now we're all good, right? Now we're all good?
Who was aged 12 during the massacre. Japanese soldiers searched for flower girls everywhere. In order to save my life, I shaved my head and hid with my mother-in-law in a cave. My older brother just got married 2 days earlier. Japanese soldier chased my sister-in-law.
Maybe nukes aren't so
and tried
bad
to
after
rape
all,
her.
guys.
My sister-in-law would rather die than be humiliated. As a result, she jumped into a pond and drowned. In addition, I had a cousin who was in her 20s. She was dragged into a cave by 3 Japanese soldiers and raped and killed. If you have noticed that all the accounts regarding rape that we've discussed so far have come from onlookers, rest assured that there is a good reason for that. Namely, that between the trauma left by the experience and societal shame that came from being a rape survivor in China in those days, victims have historically been incredibly reluctant to discuss their experiences. A few brave women have come forward to discuss it, however, with one being Zhang Shuhong, who was just 12 years old during the
my
massacre. She
God.
said the following: "When I accompanied my grandpa at home,
my
a
God.
Japanese devil with a beard all over his face broke into the room and searched for flower girls, pointing at my grandpa with a bayonet. My grandfather said no. The devil pointed at me. Then grandfather kneeled down, begging him. My grandpa said with gestures that I was too young, explaining that I was only 12. But the devil wouldn't listen, and he was going to stab my grandfather. I said to my grandfather, 'Grandpa, it's okay. I will see what he is going to do.' Grandpa disagreed, but the devil dragged me to the bed and stripped off my trousers. Then his whole body pressured on top of me. I felt a huge pain. Then I fainted. When I woke up, my grandpa sat beside me, crying. What should we do? It was so painful that I couldn't get up. The bed was full of blood. Grandpa tied my legs together with a rope, my private part torn apart by the devil, which caused a lifelong disability.
fuck?
Because of this, I almost died when I gave birth to my son. After that, I didn't dare to have another child. As darkness continued to envelop Nanjing, a glimmer of hope began to shine through in the form of the Nanjing Safety Zone. This enclave, a mere 1.5 square miles in size, was a last-ditch effort at preserving life amid the unrestrained chaos, a space in which anyone who found their way to it would largely be left
Bro, how do these people make Frieza seem like a good guy?
alone by the Japanese. Though small,
This is
establishing and
terrible.
preserving the zone was a Herculean task, and one that was only achieved through the bravery and cooperation of a select group of individuals who dared to stand their ground when all seemed lost. Chief among these was John Rabe, the German expatriate businessman, the very same John Rabe whose testimony we looked at earlier in the video. Rabe was a card-carrying Nazi, and ironically his uniform and party membership book, normally Implements of Hate, became the very tools he needed to set about saving as many Chinese lives as he could. For you see, despite the wicked ideology that had taken hold of his mind, Rabe had grown quite fond of the Chinese after years of hospitality in their country, and he would be damned if he was going to stand around and do nothing as they were killed around him. His strategy? Donning his Nazi uniform and waving his party membership book in the face of any Japanese soldier he could get his hands on. This bold strategy worked, and Rabe...
So I don't get it. Why were Iran and Japan trying to team up with the Nazis? Was it not clear to everybody that Hitler was bad? Different spheres of influence? They wanted expansion? Jesus.
soon negotiated the establishment of the safety zone and secured reassurances that the Japanese would honor it.
What do we think the most fucked up shit the United States did was? Like, is there like some dark part of history that the United States like wants people to not know? Nukes? We think the nukes were the worst thing? Vietnam War? I would love to also find out the atrocities of the United States and like the worst shit every country's ever done. Who do y'all think is the most evil country on earth? Today, North Korea, China, Russia, Iran, Greenland. What about Greenland? Who do y'all think the best country is? USA, America, UK, New Zealand, Russia, France. That can't be right. USA, obviously? Yeah, it's probably the USA. You're right, guys.
One of the people he saved, Li Wei, a schoolteacher in her early 30s, spoke of her experiences, describing how she lost her home and all her belongings to the Japanese onslaught, but after dodging Japanese bullets along with her elderly mother and young niece, she found safety in the zone. Conditions were cramped, with Rabe packing people into every square foot of space he had available, and they were squalid, with Rabe struggling to find enough supplies to properly care for everyone in his custody. But they were safe, and Li Wei and her family went on to survive the massacre, never having to be subjected to any of the horrors that we discussed earlier in the video. All in all, Li Wei was just one of an estimated 300,000 people who were saved by being crammed into the zone by Rabe, a truly monumental achievement.
So 300,000 people got into the zone before the storm got them. Okay, hopefully there's enough chug jugs to heal them up.
And one that undoubtedly makes Rabe one of history's greatest ever humanitarians. The irony of him doing this while being a devout Nazi has not been lost on historians, and now...
Wait, so is this like the one good Nazi that existed? Do people call him the one good Nazi?
Over 85 years later, they still struggle to explain the stuff.
You're an asshole, dude? Hey, man, I'm just trying to provide some humor for some very dark video. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm just trying to provide some relief for like one of the worst things I've ever heard.
Dichotomy. The massacre finally came to an end in late January 1938, at which point the foul horrors we examined in this video had been underway.
See, not all Nazis are bad? Yeah, I know, man. I think Asmongold's great. Okay.
For 6 weeks. We ultimately don't know for certain how many people perished, but it's generally accepted that the figure's around 300,000. To break this figure down in a way that our minds can better appreciate, this equates to around 300 people an hour, every hour, for the full duration of the massacre. As for rapes, due to the issue around trauma and culture that we mentioned earlier, it's all but impossible to arrive at a final figure, but one can extrapolate out what we learned earlier and quickly realize that the figure, whatever it is nothing short of horrendous. Today, the pain and horror of those dark weeks lives on in the collective memory of the Chinese people and is commemorated through several memorials across China, most prominently at the Nanjing.
Yeah, that's crazy because like I could totally understand this, because this is you know, people are still alive from this. This was only 80 years ago, right? Like some of the worst shit I've ever heard. I cannot believe how fresh this is. That's just fucking horrible, man. I understand the hatred now.
Massacre Memorial Hall, positioned near a mass grave known as the Pit of 10,000 Corpses. This solemn space serves not only as a reminder of the anguish and savagery endured, but also as a staunch sentinel against the erasure or diminishment of historical truths, ensuring that the victims are remembered and the atrocities are never repeated.
Wow. That was one of the worst things I've ever heard. Once again, in war, I understand killing needs to happen, but raping children, I just don't understand that, man. Holy fuck. Well, that was very, very, very interesting. Great video. I'm gonna see how YouTube handles this when this video goes live, and as long everybody's handling this okay, and you know, it's met with elegance and grace and understanding, talking about these horrific events, I'll continue. But I'm gonna wait to get a vibe check of my YouTube viewers when I upload this, And yeah, if this video is well received, then we'll continue on. But I obviously don't want to make anybody uncomfortable. I know a lot of people go to me to have comfort through a lot of these times, and it obviously going through this shit is pretty rough to hear about. But I would love to get more educated. So we'll see how it goes. Very interesting, a very well spoken individual. Let me link that guy's channel. That was a fantastic video. Yeah, that was Into the Shadows. I'm definitely going to be watching a lot more of that guy's vids. That was awesome. I'm uncomfortable with how many Americans we have in chat. Fuck you, man. What's wrong with America? Like, comment, subscribe.